it's almost like your business model is becoming worse and worse. Like what used to be enough to make you profitable as a country is not enough, and so you need to get more from the world to a stage where it's such one-sided and so sucking the world so dry that there is bound to be a counter reaction from the world saying like, are you kidding me? Like we're dying effectively because of you, by your fault. And on top of that, we need to pay you guys. Like,
Hello, everybody. This is Pascal from Neutrality Studies, and today I'm joined again by Arnaud Bertrand, one of Twitter X's best and most profound political analysts. Many of you have seen him probably here on this show and a few others, and if you are not subscribed to his Twitter X feed, I highly recommend doing so. He always delivers very insightful reports, actually, short and long form, about China and the world. Arnaud, I'm very glad you're back here again.
Well, I'm very pleased to be back. Thank you, Pascal.
So I wanted to talk to you originally about 2 weeks ago about the tariffs and the own goal that the United States is doing with it, but a lot of things have developed since. And could you maybe update us on how you see the tariff saga unfolding, especially vis-a-vis China and Southeast Asia?
Sure. I mean, the tariff is still really puzzles me because I still can't understand why why Trump did that. And I actually wonder if Trump's administration, even themselves, know why, because you keep hearing, conflict, like so many explanations that, don't make sense together. So one day you hear that it's all about making deals, and that the tariffs will be removed when they make a deal with that or that country. Another day you hear that it's about reviving manufacturing in the US. Another day you hear that it's about raising money, new form of taxation in order to finance the US budget. And all of those are mutually exclusive, right? So if it's about making deals and the tariffs will get removed at some point, then you can't revive manufacturing, because as a manufacturer you wouldn't invest in in a new factory in the US on the basis of the tariffs if you know they're going to come out, and that then your business plan is not going to be commercially viable anymore. So those two contradict each other, right? And I really have the feeling from what the Trump administration is saying that the narrative is evolving in real time. The justification for the tariffs is evolving in real time based on the reaction. So, about 3 weeks to 1 month ago, Scott Bessent was saying that thanks to the tariff, they could put in place a grand encirclement plan around China. That was his justification at the time. And, Bloomberg did a big piece about that. And the plan was to get Japan, South Korea, China's neighbor, to due to the pressure of the tariffs, agree to a deal with the US where the US would remove the tariffs, and in exchange they would, do less business with China, and as such, kind of starve China's economy. But what you're seeing happen is the exact contrary. You're in Japan yourself, so you know how it's going on. Japan has had extremely strong words against the tariffs. You know that better than I do, which is actually quite unusual for Japan to be to have such strong language against the US and to push back so much against an American initiative. And you've even seen recently a joint statement by the finance ministers of Japan, of South Korea, of China, and the ASEAN countries, they were all gathered, I think, in Italy. So the finance ministers and the central bankers, and they issued a joint statement basically saying, we as a region, we as East and Southeast Asia, we're going to act together to, make our region more resilient against, all this trade uncertainty. So this is, the exact contrary of an encirclement plan against China. It's kind of bringing Asia, East Asia and Southeast Asia together to kind of de-risk themselves from the US. So, the narrative is going to have to evolve there, because it can't be an encirclement plan against China anymore. So that's why it's so hard to comment on tariffs, because things move all the time, and based on the reaction, then the Trump administration keeps saying, I don't know, it's not about that. In the end, it's about that other thing. And in the end, I think that it was just probably a big mistake that they're trying to, that they can't, admit, and they're trying to rationalize it based on whatever they can.
Also, the way it was done, right, with this very strange calculation that was stupid from the beginning, and the fact that they said, "Oh, we're gonna put tariffs on everybody because they rip us off, because we have a trade deficit with them." But you even put 10% on those that you have a trade surplus with. So obviously, I mean, it's just very blatantly untrue, the statements, which begs the question: like, is it just a blunder? Or like, are we just being misled, right? And there is a 3D chess game or 4D chess game going on. But as you correctly point out, I mean, even the Japanese are now highly alert. They were already angry with the United States during the first Trump administration, and now the second one is driving home the point that this is not an anomaly but really what the United States is about. And Japan is very much reminded of the 1980s right now, when Japan was on the receiving end of the stick. So do you also think that we now for the first time have a chance of more structural cooperation between Japan and China? And the two have already been cooperating on the business level very, very deeply. They are major. I mean, China is Japan's second or first or second most important
I think it's partner. The first. I think it's the first.
It's probably the first. So, and China has always been something that Japan tried to approach pragmatically but carefully, because of risks involved also in local regulations. But do you think that we might see more of an integration? Because, when the TPP got killed off by Trump the first time, then Japan kind of picked it up and actually then was kept working on these trading agreements. And there's a trade agreement also including China. So how do you see the East Asian situation evolving?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I just need to base myself on the declaration of the various players. Clearly, Japan doesn't want to be pressured to have to choose between the US and China, because it will be, suicidal from an economic standpoint for them. Because China is their main trading partner, and the more what we're seeing is that the more the US kind of forces their hand to choose, and that's not only with Japan, that's with a lot of other countries too, then a lot of those countries are kind of like, okay, like if you force me to choose, you might not like the answer, because I actually do much more business with China than I do with you. And, China is actually a much more stable a player in their relationship with me. Like, the very definition of Trump is is instability. Like from one day to the next, you don't know what to expect, right? Policy changes, every truth social post. So he might come up with a crazy thing tomorrow, and everyone needs to change their whole economy based on that. You can't deal with that as a country. If you can't deal with that level of chaos and uncertainty, so it's kind of natural for countries to want to kind of insulate themselves from that sort of uncertainty, especially when the on the other side of the ledger you have China, which is anything but unpredictable. It's like extremely stable with the same government for decades, the 5-year plans and so on. Like exactly where they stand, what they want, what they're gonna do, and they also don't have the same conditions. Like China is never gonna tell Japan, it's never told anybody, you need to choose between us on the US. It's just like, you do what you want. We just don't want you to be hostile with us, but we're fine with you being friendly with the US. So there is much more flexibility and flexibility there than you see from the US side. So all of this is kind of I don't think Japan wants, especially, to be closer to China. I mean, there is a lot of history there. The Japanese and Chinese don't really like each other and so on. But the US is kind of forcing their hand. They progressively have less and less choice than having to do so. And that's the case for a lot of other countries in the region too.
And you're there, you're in the region. I mean, do you hear any talks, from Malaysia, Indonesia, China, like colleagues talking about this? How do they interpret that?
Yeah, I mean, Malaysia, it's quite clear that they're also getting much closer to China. I mean, Xi Jinping was here just 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. And I tweeted at the time the declarations of the prime minister here. It's the most China-friendly declaration by a Malaysian prime minister ever. Like it was even too much, I would say. And so that's pretty clear. Vietnam is also getting closer to China. Recently, you had the military parade that included Chinese troops in Vietnam, which was, unprecedented. And you had Vietnam officially acknowledging, which was a taboo so far for decades, that China had significantly contributed, helped during the Vietnam War against the US. China had been saying that for, I think, since the 1990s, that said, we were participating in the war and helping Vietnam, but, in Vietnam, there was a lot of national pride saying, no, we defeated the US on our own and so on.
And the war in 79 between Vietnam and China. I mean, that really soured relations badly.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, you're right. But now Vietnam has officially acknowledged that 300,000 PLA soldiers were actually there fighting with them during the Vietnam War. So you're seeing, a lot of signs in a lot of countries of, more friendship, closer relationship with China.
Can we talk a little bit about Vietnam? Because, 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago, Biden was in Hanoi, right? And he was celebrating this new strategic partnership with Vietnam, and even shaking hands with a party official who back in the days was in the trenches fighting against the Americans. Mm-hmm. And, the Biden administration seems, I mean, apart from everything else that they forgot, they also completely forgot that they're here having a strategic partnership with North Vietnam, right? The current the current government of Vietnam is the government of North Vietnam, and they were all smiles and all happy, and it just shows the ridiculousness, the utter lunacy of the Vietnam War itself. Of this, with this regime, you could never, this regime could never be a normal regime and stuff like that, right? But now 2 years later, we have the next administration, which basically just kicks Vietnam where it really hurts. I mean, it's no coincidence that Vietnam was the first country that rushed immediately to the US, because its dependency on exports to the US market is just so large, because they are the manufacturing hub, right? Yeah. What do you hear from Vietnam or Vietnamese colleagues about their situation now?
So I'm anything but a Vietnam specialist, and I don't have any Vietnamese colleagues. I'm just checking the news, basically. And I don't think that there was ever a possibility of Vietnam, choosing between the US and China. I think Vietnam has always been very smart on positioning itself in the middle. Yeah. Between the US and China, not antagonizing one or the other, but it's the same situation as we were, speaking about earlier with Japan, with these extremely hostile moves by the US, by Trump. I think it was, in the top 5 countries most affected by tariffs, the first after Liberation Day, if I remember correctly. I think that probably scared a lot of people in Vietnam, and they realized the risk inherent to their exposure to the American economy. That one day they could, come up with such measure, and the impact that will have on Vietnam's economy. And so my bet is that there is a lot of strategic rethinking in Vietnam, where they're like, okay, we have a major risk here, and we need to insulate our economy from that, not be that dependent to the US and probably to exports in general.
And in the short term, the problem is that these trade links, of course, are something that takes time to build up. And then once they're in place, I mean, it really, really, really hurts. Also in Malaysia, where you are, do you see any mitigation strategies in order to kind of deal with this? And even in the United States, we are not quite sure just yet about the impacts, because there's about this 2 or 3 months delay between the tariffs then starting to hurt, and we see certain US companies actually developing strategies. Who is it? Microsoft that said it's going to raise the prices on its devices globally in order to offset, the hurt for the US consumer a little bit, because actually the tariffs would only bite in the US, but you can mitigate that by increasing prices everywhere. Do you see strategies that Vietnam, Southeast Asian businesses are taking at the moment?
I mean, the biggest strategy I think that we're seeing is increasing trade with the non-US world. So increasing trade within the region, trying to increase trade with Europe, with Africa, and so on and so forth, in order to de-risk themselves from the American market. I was speaking with actually I was recently last week in vacation in Indonesia, and I was 5 days on a boat with a good friend of mine, who is a managing director for one of the world's top logistic company, one of the top 3. So he knows everything about trade flows because that's his daily job. And what he's seeing is that not only there is a major drop of trade between China and the US of the order of -40, -60%, but you're not seeing an increase, a counterbalance from other countries. Like, you will think that what the US doesn't import from China, it will get from the rest of the world, but you're not seeing that. On the contrary, the decrease in trade to the US seems to be quite generalized. And what he's saying is that in Malaysia, there are directives to not do that specifically. They don't want to do that. They don't want, Chinese companies then kind of cleaning their products through Malaysia, making them Malaysian and sending them to the US. And they overall don't want to increase their exposure to the US market, because that will put them in a more risky situation all in all. So I think that is the strategic thinking in most countries.
Do you think it might happen that actually the US is going to experience serious like consumer good shortages?
Yes.
Empty shelves. Is that a possibility?
I think it's a very strong possibility. Yeah, and I think it's going to come soon. I think probably. I mean, Liberation Day, if I remember correctly, was the 2nd of April. And it takes about 1 month or so for those cargo boats to arrive. So I think we're starting to enter into the period where the drop bit by bit in shipping is going to start to be seen on the shelves in the shop. If not next week, maybe the week after. I don't see how you can avoid that with 40 to 60% drop in shipping from China and then drop in shipping from the rest of the world. Like it's almost like mathematical. You will see an impact.
Well, this is going to change something. I mean, if people on the ground actually see that if shelves are empty, like I've experienced it only once or twice in Japan when due to natural disasters, basically typhoons and so on, people start buying convenience stores empty. And if you go into a convenience store or some store and most of the shelves are empty, it impacts you. It's like you get slightly scared because you realize, God damn it, where else am I going to get it from than the shop?
Yeah. And I think even the Trump administration acknowledges that this will probably happen. I mean, you heard probably Trump's comment around you're going to get $2 instead of $30 for Christmas. Did you hear that one?
No. What was that?
Well, he was asked questions around shortages and things getting more expensive, and his answer was basically, acknowledging that will happen, and that instead of buying $30 to your daughter for Christmas, you will only get her $2, and that's going to be okay.
Yeah, right. Because he isn't even willing to give the toy manufacturers an exemption. I mean, he even hits the toy sector. Just this is like one of different policies that to me I cannot interpret differently than the United States taking down the last bit of its soft power. The other one that I would like to get your take on is what the Trump administration is doing with the education sector. I mean, cracking down on foreign students, because this is one of the things we must acknowledge. I mean, even Chinese cadres still send their kids to US schools because they just are the best, the higher education system, or considered the best. I mean, and they do offer very good education, right? For a lot of money, but they do offer good education. And now this also, to me, seems to change. I mean, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's Chinese parents sending their kids to the US is less and less the case. If you look at the amount of Chinese students going to the US, has been dropping already for a few years, and precisely because they feel that they're less and less welcome, and you've had a lot of initiatives that were very hostile to either Chinese students or Chinese ethnic, academic staff, like the China Initiative by the FBI that was launched I think in the first Trump administration, or things like that, that deters people from going to study in the US or working in the academic field in the US. So I think more on at the same time you have Chinese academic institutions that are getting better and better. If you look at the university rankings, like Tsinghua, which is the top. I think it's in the top 3 in the world right now in most fields. So it's really up there. And all in all, as with all the initiatives by Trump, on the Trump administration in general, it's pretty hard to understand. I liked the way a Chinese scholar wrote about it. His name is Koji Mao. He's actually a former Tsinghua student who now studies in Harvard. And he compared it to both what Khrushchev did in the Soviet Union and the Cultural Revolution in China. So the way he compared it to Khrushchev is Khrushchev was very intent on showing that he differed from Stalin. And so he had, all these reforms, and he pushed away a lot of, important officials under Stalin and so on. He really wanted to, do a clean break with the era of Stalin. And that actually is the thing that triggered the Sino-Soviet split, because that meant that there was no more ideological unity between the Chinese take on communism and the Soviet take, and when there was no ideological communion anymore, like there was that split. And in some way, that's what we are witnessing with Trump. He clearly wants to make a clean break with the past, with Biden, with any previous American presidents, which, I mean, he insults them all copiously. And what he's doing is clearly a big ideological break from the past. I mean, anyone can see that. And that is inducing a split of some sort between the US and its previous partners, Europe first and foremost, but probably also countries like Japan or even South Korea, where like we don't recognize you anymore. Like we thought we were on the same page, but clearly no. we have a very, very different understanding of the world that we should live in at this stage. And maybe ironically, China is probably a better defender now today of the principle and the ideology that the US used to stand for. Like, who is defending like the WTO, for instance, and the UN, international law, and so on. China defends it more than Trump. Like that's pretty factual to see that. So it's really bizarre. So that's one thing. And then there was the Cultural Revolution comparison, where what Mao did at the time is he took some outsiders to the political system, and he also tried to get the population on its side to fight against the system, against the elites, and he purged the elites. Of course, he sent them all to work in the countryside and so on. And there is also some of that with Trump. I mean, he's getting outsiders like Elon Musk, or well, Kennedy is kind of an outsider in health, those types of profiles. And he also constantly tries to get his MAGA base on his side, like directly speaking to the people to get them to do a movement that changes America, like a real cultural revolution of some sort. But probably like the cultural revolution of China, there is a lot of movement, a lot of enthusiasm, but concretely, not a lot of things that make the country's living conditions progress. It's more about ideology for the sake of ideology to mark a change, to mark a step change, more than the changes themselves, if that makes sense. And probably that is the key thing that we may remember about the Trump presidency, not so much the actual changes that he made that often don't make any sense, but more the fact that his presidency constituted a change in itself. Like there was a before and after, and I'm sure that after at some point some rationality is going to come back, but it will be a very different America from the one we had before. He's more the chaos agents, like the guy that kind of kicks the hornet's nest and bringing a lot of chaos. That marks the beginning of a new chapter, basically.
Yeah, I agree. On the other hand, I constantly have at the back of my mind the argument that Brian Berletic makes on the new Atlas, which is like, guys, forget it. It's all pretense, overall what we are seeing is continuity of agenda. From Obama to Trump 1 to Biden to Trump 2, what we are seeing is a constant drive, like, for instance, when it comes to Ukraine, to the militarization of Ukraine and for its using in different ways, in different shapes, with different narratives. But that one has continued also during the Trump period. Trump is the one that already escalated things in West Asia, with recognizing, Trump won with recognizing the Golan Heights as a part of Israel. So overall, what we're seeing is just a different version, a different flavor of overall the same playbook. And although Trump is pretending to take down parts of the U.S. Deep state, he doesn't touch it where it hurts. Like he doesn't touch the finance sector, right? Not at all. He supports the finance sector, which has hollowed out much of the productive use of U.S. capital, right? Capital is not allocated anymore in companies because the finance sector is just more the gambling casino is more is more productive for the financiers, right? For the rentier class. What's your take on that?
That's an interesting question. I think there is definitely some sort of struggle between the inertia, right? Of the U.S. is a very, very big boat, right? With a lot of inertia. But I do think that there is a genuine attempt by Trump to want to change things. I don't think that it's all theater. I really don't think that. I think he really wants to input a change, but I also think that there is a lot of incompetence at play, and that he can't a lot of things he can't deliver on. So, for instance, let's take Ukraine. I do genuinely think that he wanted to bring about a peace deal, and he said that during the campaign, and it will be. I don't see how he could have said, "I want a peace deal," without really wanting it, because that was going to be a major embarrassment to him, right? If he doesn't deliver, which is what's likely to happen. Then he wouldn't have said that. He would not have said, "I'm going to solve it quickly in 24 hours," and so on. I think there is a real intention there. But then when you look at how he went about it, it looked extremely amateurish. Like he sent one guy, Vitkov, to Moscow. A guy who is not even a professional negotiator, was just doesn't have the profile to negotiate those types of deals. And then he did it in a way where he majorly antagonized the Europeans, who then, of course, were going to be completely against the deal, and then Ukraine was going to be against the deal as well, because now they know that they have the back. Europeans have their back, and therefore they have leverage to be against the deal. Like, it was he went about it in an extremely incompetent way, which enables things to kind of not change and remain the same, with the US in the end not managing to do a deal, and still having to be a support of Ukraine, because if he doesn't do that now, after the deal is likely to collapse, then Ukraine is going to be in total collapse, and that's going to look even worse for him, right? So I think it's more that sort of dynamic. It's not. I don't buy that it's all just theater, and is not genuine about what he wants to do.
Yeah.
I think there is some genuineness there, but it just has really, really hard time to deliver.
Yeah, no, I think the argument is not like that he doesn't want to try to change something with Ukraine. The argument is that it's not coming from a place of trying to actually get the United States on a more peaceful footing. It's more, okay, US ran into a brick wall. Now you need to somehow deal with that fact and take some of your force back in order to refocus it on either West Asia or East Asia, right? So because the thing that would need to happen is actually cracking down on the military-industrial complex. The Trump has been cracking down on USAID. Has been cracking down on some of these aid institutions, but there we don't know where that is coming from. Whether this is just him thinking that the US is throwing money out of the window for aid, or if this is actually Tulsi Gabbard telling him, look, these regime change operations have been very bad for us, and he actually goes after that. But the military-industrial complex, the machinery that creates the incentive for the US to try to use as much of its military capacity as it has. That one has been left untouched, just like the finance sector has been left untouched. So in a sense, the pillars of the US empire in the world are still very much standing there. So I wonder.
Yeah. I mean, there is a bit of we want our cake and what's the expression again? We want our cake and eat it.
We want our cake and eat it all.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm reminded of that article that one of Trump's key economic advisor wrote. I think his name is Steve Miran. I know his last name is Miran. I can't remember if his first name is Steve. So anyway, he wrote a big article, like kind of a scholarly article, to try to explain Trump's economic theory. And he especially focused on the dollar as a reserve currency. And what he was saying is that we both want to keep the dollar as a reserve currency, but we also think it's a burden. And because it's a burden, then you guys, like the world collectively, all the other countries, you need to pay for it, pay for your use of the dollar, remunerate us for this burden, and that's why we put the tariffs and so on. It's just a way to kind of get credits or get remuneration for us to assume this common good, this global common of providing the dollar out of the kindness of our heart as a reserve currency. So it's just so bizarre to me because the dollar as a reserve currency is what a former president Valéry Giscard d'Estaing used to call the exorbitant privilege. It's as you said rightly, it's one of the foundations of U.S. power. It's the reason why they can do all the sanctions. It's how they control the world's finance, is the reason why they can have such a huge trade deficit. Because what is the trade deficit? At the end of the day, it's countries sending their goods to the US, and the US in exchange giving them little pieces of paper with the heads of presidents that they print for free, right? Like essentially, because the dollar is is the world's reserve currency, a lot of what the US imports from the rest of the world is effectively free to them because they can print as many dollars as they want, and they won't have a liquidity crisis. So presenting that as some burden that they need to somehow bear, on saying that it means that the rest of the world is taking advantage on them, that's just bizarre, right? So there is that kind of duality where there is some understanding of the foundations of U.S. power, like yes, the dollar as a reserve currency is very important for us, but at the same time, they're like we also see that as a burden. So it's strange.
It's highly confused. It's highly confused, and the situation is even worse because they don't even send the little bills with the pictures of presidents abroad anymore. It's really just a spreadsheet entrance in a U.S. bank usually, right?
Exactly.
In exchange for real stuff that you have, and that creates the material wealth.
Yeah, exactly.
But it goes hand in hand with all of these other bizarre framings of what's going on. I mean, by now we know the proxy war in Ukraine. And by the way, I'm going to make a program about this. I will stop calling it a proxy war. I will call it an implementation war, because proxy wars are between proxy armies of the superpowers. This is the Ukraine being the implementation partner or the implementation victim of a long-hedged strategy toward Russia, and then also like commanded. We know New York Times has told us in 2 articles. We know now this was then run by the United States from Germany, right? And because this solves a big problem, the Vietnam War problem, which was that the United States in the end had to retreat because it lost too many people, right? Treasure is one thing, but losing blood is the other one. So the US had to figure out how to use its treasure in order to get blood of others, and that's the Ukrainians. It was the Afghans before, during in the 80s, and now it's Ukraine. But now the United States even demands payment for having had its implementation partner do these policies. So in a sense, it's becoming too obvious by now what the heavy-handedness of these policies, whereas other administrations try to hide this, right? They try to hide that under all the rosy liberal and neoliberal neoconservative like language of values and so on. And Trump doing away with the value and the rhetoric about this, doesn't it like also give us a bit more clarity about the situation, in fact?
Maybe, I mean, maybe one way of seeing it is that it's basically, trying to suck as much from the world as possible. So like you were saying, it's in that implementation war, they're using the Ukrainians to weaken. I mean, at least that's the purpose, to weaken the Russians, like they did in Afghanistan and so on. Whereas in the Afghanistan war, that was enough. I mean, they were grateful for the Afghan soldiers, the Mujahideens and so on, to do their dirty work for them. now they want even more. They want some sort of retribution from the Ukrainians for this. So it's like it's almost like your business model is becoming worse and worse, and like what used to be enough to make you profitable as a country is not enough, and so you need to get more from the world to a stage where it's too obvious that it's such one-sided, and so sucking the world so dry that there is bound to be a counter reaction from the world saying like, are you kidding me? Like we're dying effectively because of you, by your fault. And on top of that, we need to pay you guys. Like that, yeah.
Europe. I mean, the Europeans are the ones who haven't yet said we seriously have enough. I mean, they said they are pissed off with the United States and with Trump, but take the Nord Stream. I mean, the Germans could at any point in time come back to Nord Stream, and the Europeans could just like open up a proper investigation. They still don't do that, or they still don't actually tell us the findings. We know that the Swedes and the Danes looked into it, but they're not telling us the findings. When do you think the last straw will be so heavy that it will break the camel's back, and that the Europeans will, seriously stand up and say like, okay, we know this, so let us show that we know this. Actually, in fact, Trump the other day, he was kidding in the Oval Office about Nord Stream, and they were kind of laughing about it. It's like, oh no, well, we know, but
yeah. I mean, everyone knows.
But the Europeans still. I mean, this was such an embarrassing moment.
Yeah.
I mean, most embarrassing, especially for Germany, and they're still not getting to the point where they're saying like, okay, let's show what this was about.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, clearly it was embarrassing, but the most embarrassing part, I think, at the time, from Germany's standpoint, would have been to say the guys that we consider our partner, that we fight alongside, are the guys that did this. So the embarrassing part for them was not so much the fact that their critical infrastructure was destroyed. I mean, that's bad, but the fact that it's their friend who did that, the one that they want to present as their friend, right? And so that's why I think they didn't say it. Now that Trump is less and less seen in a good way in Europe, I think it could get revealed, but I think there is also a lot of hostility in Europe still towards Russia. That's clear, and I think now, I mean, I can only suppose that they also don't want to say this as a present to Russia, right? Because then it would be like enacting a break, maybe final break within the West, saying, okay, like the US actually did an act of war against us, like that's very serious, which would be kind of like if you're in a divorce, you first get separated a bit for a while, but you still have the hope that you might come back together. Mm-hmm. But once you say, actually, my husband tried to kill me or rape me or something like that, once you admit that there was something, really, really bad that happened, then that's a final break and you're going to divorce. Like there is no coming back from that. So I think that's the view. And that's what I suppose, that they don't want to go to that extent, because then there is no escaping the fact that the divorce will be final.
The transatlantic divorce coming up. We'll see how long it still takes. Last question, and to bring us back to Asia. On April 26th, there was a large protest in Taipei against the government of William Lai, and I think you also tweeted about it, and that it's interesting that in the Western media you never see it, you never hear anything about protests when they're against governments that Western media likes. And I talked to Joanna Ley earlier this week, the former lawmaker in the Republic of China in Taiwan, right? And she said, "Look, we organized this, and the Western media was silent. You had CNN here, we have BBC, they have their correspondents here, and they just didn't say anything about this." Was this event that was against the ruling party, which is of course a pro-independence party and a very pro-American government? Was this protest actually, did it register in Chinese media? If you follow that,
Yeah, I saw about it, and I do follow quite a lot of Taiwanese as well. And I do see, at least from the Taiwanese that I do follow, I do see quite rapid change in mindsets. Like a lot of Taiwanese on Twitter that I follow went from, having the traditional Taiwanese standpoint, like we want status quo, but we are much more friendly with the US, and we really don't like the PRC. To now having some sort of a mind shift, like first of all, the response of China, of the PRC to the tariffs was, I think, widely admired in Taiwan, even amongst the Taiwanese population that is typically hostile to the PRC, especially in contrast with their own government, because everyone can see that it's hostile. And it was at the beginning almost as hostile towards Taiwan as it was, towards the ROC, that it was towards the PRC. And the Taiwanese government, they were quite pathetic. Like they was the first to rush to the US, and even I saw a clip where they were like, "We can be so proud of ourselves because we are part of the first three that that went there to negotiate." There is nothing to be proud of about that. That's kind of shameful, right? Whereas China, from the PRC from the beginning, stood firm. And we're like, that's unacceptable. We're going to resist. Of course, there is much more dignity in doing that. And so I think that shifted a lot of mind. Also, everything that's happening around TSMC and pressure by the US to get them to move their plans to the US and to do significant investments in the US and so on. It's felt by the Taiwanese as robbing their crown jewels, and rightly so, because that's what it is. And so, yeah, you definitely see a mood shift, a very, very big mood shift amongst the Taiwanese.
Interesting. That would be a positive thing, because the worst thing is like blind trust in the United States, and then you end up like Ukraine, and we must avoid Taiwan becoming the Ukraine of East Asia, right? That's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
In any case, this was very interesting, and your insights are always like fantastic. Everybody, I really recommend go on Twitter and find Arnaud Bertrand. The link will be in the description, and we'll talk soon again. Arnaud, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you, Pascal.